Please welcome Jennifer Lawrence. David O. Russell first, writer-director David O. Russell. Who is next behind that door? Christian Bale. Amy Adams. Now Jennifer Lawrence. Bradley Cooper. And Jeremy Renner.
Christian Bale carries coats. That was a joke, and he really brought it.
Well, David, let me start by asking you, this is a story that takes place 35 years ago. What struck you about it as being timeless, as being a story that you could tell today that would have resonance for today's audience?
The characters and these actors, I see things evolved naturally for me, starting with The Fighter, with Amy, Christian, and Mark Wahlberg, and Melissa Leo, and that was a real revelation to me of a world of people that I continue to be fascinated by, people who are very emotional and straight, and I find them fascinating, how they live, and they love life. And that was also true in Silver Linings Playbook. Even when they're facing formidable problems, there's a passion for life. So these characters leapt up. Eric Singer wrote a script that was more procedural, and I was talking to Bradley, Amy, and Christian about it first. And what I was very interested in was more the character point of view of reinvention and a larger idea of surviving, how everybody has to embrace a self, as Pat did in Silver Linings. Everybody has to act or embrace something for better or worse, even when they have to change it. Yeah. So that was I think Christian can talk to that, because we were in his backyard.
Well, I'll ask Christian, because we first see you in the movie setting up your elaborate hairpiece, and you're known for the physical transformations that you undergo in a lot of your roles. This one is quite dramatic. How important are those kind of details for you in terms of finding the character, being able to see yourself in that hairpiece, in those clothes, with the belly, all of that?
Right, well, I had assumed that this con artist would be the sort of rather cliched idea of a con artist, that he would be quite vain and suave and slick and giving the impression of being very moneyed, etc. And then David and me had these conversations and talked about, everything David was saying there about the desire for reinvention and changing of our situations. And then I saw a picture of Mel Weinberg. I'm not sure if Mel is here or not. I saw him earlier this evening. But Irv is very, very loosely, and I say that because Mel would punch my lights out if I ever said it actually was Irv, very, very loosely based on Mel Weinberg. And the first time I saw his picture, I just went, no way, it was just so fantastic. He had this comb over, he was rather rotund, and his clothes didn't necessarily fit him perfectly. And it was so not the cliche, and as soon as I saw that, I just said, I can't do it any other way. It's got to be that, there's got to be this sort of rolling momentum to him. And there was a great charm to him as well, which I think was so surprising. And he really is a romantic at heart, and Mel is as well. Mel would hate me for saying it, but Mel really is a romantic at heart as well. And I just felt that all of that fed into the internal side of the character.
Well, I'll ask you, and also Amy, did you think of this at all, and David, if you want to comment on this also, as a movie on some level about acting? Because there's a lot of talk in the script about getting into character, about having to convince people of this role that you're playing. There's even a line that these were the roles we were meant to play. Was the process of playing these characters in a way drawing on your own experience of getting into character?
Not so much. I mean, in the sense that, there is something that I have in common with Sydney, being an actress. I mean, reinvention and doing things from the feet up and really having to invest and convince people of the truth you're telling them. But really, as an actress, it's not my job to lie to you. It's my job to tell you the truth and to find the truth of the character. So in a way, very different, but we have a lot in common because of that.
Was it particularly challenging with Sydney to find the truth, because she herself seems sometimes to be uncertain of who she is at a given moment? Is she Edith? Is she Sydney?
But that is her truth, you know. Uncertainty is just as much a reality as certainty. So allowing myself to invest in her experience, even if it was shaky at times, that's the magic, is just finding her truth and investing in it, even if it feels shaky.
Jennifer, it's a wonderful scene-stealing role that you have in this movie. Who was Rosalyn to you? What was her dilemma? What made her interesting to play?
Rosalyn was interesting because she was doing all of these awful things and saying all of these terrible, awful, terrible things, but finding a reason why, a nice reason why. She's just young, she's just naive, and she sees the world a certain way, and she sees her life a certain way, and she sees, a marriage is for life, and so I'm going to entrap this man and dangle his son in front of him if I have to, because that is the right thing to do. I just thought she was interesting because she was manipulative, but in her own mind, she was manipulative for the right reasons. And I thought she was hilarious.
Can you talk a little bit about doing the live and let die sequence? What
Well,
that day of shooting
David,
was
that was God, I got so loud. Sorry. Yeah. Do you guys need earplugs? David we spent about 3 weeks or so kind of creating Rosalyn, and we were both bouncing off these ideas. I was just like, I think that she watches infomercials. I think that her hair, her makeup, she's watching all these do-it-yourselves. She has every exercise thigh buster thing that she sees on TV, and David just came into my hotel room. We were supposed to go over the script or something. He comes in, he sits down on the couch, and he goes, I have a vision. And when I do it, it makes you see him, but you have to see him with the tennis shoes and the suit and the glasses and all David. He's like, I have this vision, and it's you, and you have yellow cleaning gloves. And I'm just watching him as he describes this entire thing, singing to Live and Let Die, and we had to actually tailor the movie around, which I give Bradley and David both credit for doing, to make it make sense. Because David sometimes, he has these visions, he has these brilliant ideas in these visions, and then sense has to come later. And so he had this vision of Rosalyn just dancing through the house with these yellow cleaning gloves on, and then through editing, they made it make sense. But she is,
In the defense of
I was waiting for you to jump in. I was like, we can't leave it like this.
A little bit more sense than that. I think Rosalyn is very angry and is afraid of change. And I know what that's like. And I know that I've been afraid of change, and I've had to rile up a lot of anger or to make a change. And that's what she's doing in her way. With
He
Live
made
and Let
sense
Die
of it.
and sending them off.
And also in the script, Jack Houston says you have to let something die to let something live.
Yeah.
Right before that scene.
So did
You were
you.
thinking about it.
I was just like, all right, I'll dance.
Well, it raises an interesting question, and I'll put it to Bradley, since you, like everyone else we've talked to so far, has worked multiple times now with David. There's a feeling in this movie especially, I think, of extraordinary freedom that the actors have, that everybody seems extremely relaxed and willing to try things that maybe they wouldn't in another role in another movie. Can you talk a little bit about what the atmosphere is like on one of David sets and how he seems to bring out the best in actors?
Sure. I think the thing that we always try to strive for is to be out of our heads and in whatever the moment would be, to really talk to each other. And David creates an environment where that has to happen. Because it is literally occurring as it's being filmed. Even he'll throw in dialogue that he's writing on the spot as the camera's rolling. He likes to be lit 360 degrees so that there is no such thing as just one person's close-up. You have to be ready for the camera to come to you at any point. And it's also a very communal experience. When I think about the scenes that I've had with everybody, I don't just think of the actors. I think of David right next to the monitor. I think of Jeff Healy or Dave Thompson, the camera operator, the gentleman with the China ball lighting the eyes. You know, we're all moving around. It's really like this little nucleus. This, you know, we're the mitochondria of this cell, just, you know, powering everything. And it really does feel like this incredible generator. And that's very exciting. And it has its self-propelling energy. So we're all infused with this energy because literally people are moving around all the time. You know, in other sets, you get to there, you have your sides, you sort of block it, and you're like, did we nail the scene? Okay, let's move on. This is all about mining and finding and discovering and the hope that some magic's going to happen.
And talk a little bit about Richie. I was wondering, watching the movie, who are his role models? Who is he trying to be? Is it John Travolta in Saturday Night Fever? Is it Serpico? Who's he want to be that he is?
Doc Ellis. The baseball player who pitched a no-hitter while he was tripping on acid. But I'm not kidding, actually. That was Dave. You know, we had this idea of wanting to kind of look unrecognizable in the role, and there's some video footage, and I said, well, what about if he has curly hair? And David said, yes, he curls his own hair because he wants to be like black baseball players like Doc Ellis and all this thing, and all of a sudden, you know. And, you know, at home, there's no father figure. We like the idea that he grew up sort of without that male role model. And so it's all about him wanting to be a man, what it is to be a man, and be older and change and get out from under this rock he thinks he's in, you know, and that his family's always been in. And, yeah, so it was just about, and the other thing that was beautiful is with David, and he did for all of us. I mean, he created these characters with all of us and then wrote the script. So it was a very collaborative experience, and like Richie DeMasso chews his tongue all the time. And that was something very personal to me that somebody did. And that just, you know, if you try chewing your tongue while you're having a conversation or walk through life, everything changes. So David really uses all of those things.
And Jeremy, as the sort of newcomer here to the David O. Russell stock company, what was the, but surely not the last time, what was the experience like for you? How did the set differ from other sets that you've been on?
I think Bradley said it pretty clearly that what happened on that set was, I think, pretty original to David O. Russell. And then even more specific was his queer, quirky, amazing perception on human behavior. David O. Russell is to me is so specific. I don't know, it's a beautiful thing. It is a collaborative, massive effort every take, every day. And I love the fearlessness and the willingness to fail and be embraced when I fail and be loved when I fail. It allows me to potentially succeed. That doesn't happen on a lot of movie sets, man. It just doesn't. So it becomes a much different experience.
And you have relatively few scenes in the movie, but we feel like we get a very rich sense of who Carmine is and his family and these relationships. How much of that is coming from work that you've done with David beyond what's on the page? Are you in the rehearsals for the film sort of investigating where this character came from, what's happened in his life before the movie starts and all of that kind of thing? Because we almost can sense that watching the movie.
Yeah, quickly, it's two things. It's based on a real-life character, person, Angelo Ericetti. That's where all the base of what I had to grab onto initially. And then it was David O. Russell talking about how much he loved Carmine Polito or this Angelo Ericetti. His love that he had for this character is essentially the sort of love that I gave this character, the amount of heart and the amount of emotion that he gave out. I'm not really a man to disperse my emotions so freely, so it was quite challenging for me to wear my heart on my sleeve and kind of be very vulnerable all the time. So between David and Angela Ricchetti, I was able to start finding a character.
I want to come back to David and just ask you a little bit about creating the period in the film in terms of the costumes, the music. I mean, it is really your first period film in this sense. I mean, Three Kings is kind of a period film, but not that far back. Sometimes when you see the 60s or the 70s done in movies, it feels very pastiche. Everything seems to have quotation marks around it. This feels like a movie that could have come out in 1978. What do you chalk that up to?
Again, starting from the feet up with the characters. Everything I learned with The Fighter, Silver Linings, be real with the characters, and it will be funny, it will be heartbreaking, and anything that style, you don't think of style separate. It has to be tied to who Irving is and wants to be. There's that person you've been and that person you are becoming. So you have those two sides of Amy's character, where she's coming from and who she's becoming and who she's questioning. And when Ella Fitzgerald comes on and she's on the phone with Richie, there's a moment where, for both of them, maybe this is going to be a better choice. You know, that's a real moment. So you just come from the feet up, and then the rest of it falls in. All the designers, Michael Wilkinson is a fantastic costume designer. Judy Becker has done several films together. They make the world according to the characters, very specific, and they speak to the actors about it. I think, and I have a lot of love for that period. It's very personal to me. My dad, we lived in this area. I'm from this area. I have relatives all over this area. I have a lot of relatives in the film. The guy who smashes on the table with Robert De Niro is my cousin Richie, who works at JFK. And he's a real working man, and, you know, I love listening to him introduce Carmine, you know, and says, your friend, my friend. I mean, he's a real guy, you know. And I remember my dad and having a comb over. I remember my dad, his business falling apart in the 70s. That's all very vivid to me. So I have a lot of affection for it. I'm not drawn to cynicism. I'm drawn to what I love about each of these people. And I write the movie from each of their points of view. And when I have the privilege to sit at Christian's house or Amy's house or Jennifer's or Jeremy's or Bradley's, it's a privilege to participate with them and for me to audition for them, really. I want to audition for them and show them that, and then I have to deliver. I want to deliver a great character for them. And a great, and I don't want to say great, because, you know, I want to deliver the best movie I can. I want to deliver for them. And that inspires me. So it's a wonderful way to work if you can do it, you know, because these people are fantastic artists in their own right, and they all contributed crucial things to everything. They ask me the tough questions. They prod things. They kick the tires. They bring their own arsenal of ideas, which are fantastic, and language. I mean, Christian had inhaled all kinds of language from Mel himself, and they would just come out sometimes in a scene. Just fantastic. I mean, Amy did every scene in a British accent and an American accent, and I know how challenging that was for her because you can see it in her eyes. Her eyes are a huge window into her, and they're a weapon in a movie. They're amazing. And, you know, Jennifer will jump. You know, when you go over to the cliff, here she goes. And that's inspiring to everybody. You know, I mean, I was going to keep going. I mean, I could just say it about each of them. Bradley, a complete collaborator at every step of the way, wanted to create somebody that we felt was innocent and childlike. And quite frankly, it was a much more innocent time. I like the elegance of it. Today, a $75,000 in a briefcase would be a quaint thing. I mean, there's hundreds of millions of dollars that you don't even know how it happens from the Koch brothers, and it's legal. You know, you can do it legally, you know. So it's like that was it's a much more, I mean, they made a corporation's a person now, right? So, I mean, they can do anything. I don't know, they can give money to anybody. So, I mean, there's influence is very, and Jeremy became the connection to the man on the street. And the fact that he had a romance with Irving where they sing Delilah together is one of my, I live for that. I live for those moments. When they get thrown out of that car on the street and they're undone, I live for that. You know, these two guys, these two survivors, these two dreamers whose shirts have been ripped open by the mafia standing on Wall Street, you know, or singing Delilah together, which was Jeremy's choice. I wasn't sure what song we were going to do. It's the perfect song. It's a Tom Jones song. And this guy, he's hiding all of his singing. It's a great singer, and as is Jeremy, and he sang another song, and Amy's musicality. You leave her with the Duke Ellington record. I love Duke Ellington. That's a very special piece of music to me. I give it to the characters, and I say, says everything to each of you. You're the only two people at this party who would know this. You're the only two people, and that just opens up everything to you of possibility and love. Love is so important. And I come back to my office, and Amy's playing that record and dancing with Cooper while this man's shaving his head downstairs. And I see Amy dancing, and a million ideas come to me. It's a very musical movie to me. That's the trifecta. The holy trifecta is emotion and character, camera movement, and music. And Amy taught me how to sing Dream a Little Dream at 2 o'clock in the morning on a set, so I thank her for that.
I want to take some questions from the audience, and you, sir, had your hand in the air here.
Can you share how you chose those pieces, or how you really felt it informed the picture throughout?
It's a question to elaborate a bit on talking about the selection of the music, and that it would have been very easy to do all 70s period music, disco music, but that actually the soundtrack is much more eclectic than that.
I mean, again, you come from your heart. It has to do with the character. I'd imagine that Irving, and one of the things that made Irving and Edith Sidney in love is that they had aspired from a place of nowheresville, from the Bronx and somewhere in Albuquerque, to become urbane people. And they remind me of people my dad knew, businessmen from Jersey or the Bronx who would, he'd act like a British lord. They would dress. They decided to dress that way. They made themselves. They decided to create themselves. There's magic in that for me, and there's a love of music and a love of life in that. It's not fake. It's like there's a passion in that, like when a kid dresses up, but with much more commitment, and I cherish that, So to me, that's what interested me, and so that's what guides the music choices, And when Richie's on the phone with her and those strings come in, that's a real moment to me. Of possibility for two lonely people in a situation. A woman in love with a married man who's trapped by the Picasso of passive-aggressive karate. And these guys come in and redo narration, which is so beautiful. I mean, to have narration by 3 characters takes a lot of crafting. And they came in repeatedly, sometimes from far-flung places. They do it into an iPad. And so we could craft it like a glove to the picture as part of the process of editing. Jeff Lynne, the founder of Electric Light Orchestra, there's a piece of music called Overture 10538. That's a piece of music that's very Beatles influenced. It's a whole bit of ELO that it's never been in a movie, it's never really seen the light of day. It doesn't sound like the ELO people know. That's a great gift. He happened to really love the movie and opened up unreleased tracks to us. So there are songs in there that sound like classic hits that have never seen the light of day. Long Black Robe is a great gift from him. Music supervisor Sue Jacobs and my editor Phil Tallman are enormous collaborators with me in finding all this. Danny Elfman paints in brushstrokes that are close to the source. An enormous number of people contributed to this. And the man with the china ball on the stick is Patrick Murray, our gaffer, who would go wherever the actors went with a nice soft light.
I applaud him.
Yes, with your hand a few rows back there, yes. How did you get Robert De Niro? I assume you just called him up. He was in Silver Linings Playbook, if you didn't see it.
I thought that I've known Bob for about 10 years, and we both have family members who have faced bipolarity, so Silver Linings was a very personal movie for both of us. I personally thought his performance was terrific, as I thought was Bradley's and Jennifer's. It's and a lot of heart and soul into that, so we talked from time to time, and you had to make it interesting. He's a very meticulous man, like this guy's a very meticulous man. Endless numbers of questions, and they have passion for what they do. So they love it. Every detail to these people is everything, and that's an amazing craft and conversation. So I'm on the phone every day with Bob, and he's like, that's a part of the story, by the way, that's true. There are parts of the story that are true that you wouldn't believe. There was a mobster from Florida who shocked them by speaking Arabic, and so it's even crazier than what was true. But Bob and I made an amalgam. He wants it to be based on something real, and he wanted to do something he'd never done as a gangster. So him suddenly speaking Arabic, which he worked very hard to memorize, was fantastic. And we based it on Nicky Scarfo, who was known for never leaving a body, burying a body, because that was his trademark. And they did call Jersey gangsters farmers, which he calls Irving. He goes, "What are you, a farmer?" So all that was all very specific, and it's my pleasure to do that with Bob, to make all those decisions and choices. And one of my favorite moments was when he met the cast on the set. He shook everybody's hand, starting with this fella, and then he pulled me aside and he said, "Okay, all those I know, but who is that guy?" I said, "You just met him." I said, "That's Christian Bale." He goes, "No, that guy." That's Christian Bale. He goes, "That's Christian Bale?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "My, he looks really different." And then he gave it his sign of approval, which is this.
Yes? You, yes, pointing at yourself, yes.
Yeah, it's a very healthy way to go through award season, actually. It is. It is. I'd rather do that. I mean, it's very healthy. Then you're working, you're busy, you're focused. You're not focused on yourself or, what people are saying about your movie. You're focused on a new story. It's very healthy for me. That's my food. Keeps my spirit going. So I was so grateful we found it, because I kept seeing all these people, and it was my dream come true to talk to all of them about these parts, and then that they could all do it at that window in time. It was just a fantastic gift. I mean, Jennifer was our last comer. Jeremy and I inventing Carmine was the last, and then Jennifer was the very last. I was on the location of scouting the bedroom of Irving and Rosalyn, and I said, I think I have to ask her. I would feel wrong if I didn't at least tell her.
David, you asked me during the SAG Awards while they were announcing my category.
I don't remember
You
that.
were talking.
What about when I called you from the location scout? What about that?
Oh, right. Well, you called me and we talked about it, and I was like,
That counts.
Yeah.
That counts. That counts.
But
That was where. That was where.
I'm like at the SAG Awards, sweating bullets, and they're like calling my category, and David's like, "No, but seriously, this Rosalyn." And then she goes into the bathroom, and she's like, and he's like honestly, if you watch the footage back, you can probably see me doing this while David's trying to pitch me this movie.
I don't remember that, but you don't remember the first call either. You don't remember the
Yeah,
first
of
call.
course you don't.
Hey, the woman took her vacation between X-Men. The woman works constantly, as many of these people do, God bless. But she took 3 weeks between.
Well, I wouldn't work constantly if I didn't know you.
Thank you, I think.
On the aisle towards the back.
What's the full version of the ice fishing story?
Yeah, it sounds like really. Yeah.
I mean, you get Louis C.K. to come. I mean, Louis C.K. loved the last 2 pictures, and we were blessed to have him. I watched Melissa Leo on his show, and she's almost as famous for being on that show as she is for being in The Fighter. I mean, I don't know if you haven't seen that episode. I highly recommend it. It's a very memorable 20 minutes of television. So he came on to play a guy who actually is quite like him, a square Midwesterner, and then I wanted Louis C.K. to be Louis C.K. So we made up, I had used to go ice fishing, so we made up an ice fishing story. And his brilliance was to say that the audience and Bradley would keep guessing what it was, what the moral was. And he would keep saying, no, that's not it. and that goes to Irving saying it's so stupid. The more people say no, the more they want, you tell them no, the more they want something. So it fit. Bradley just was dying to know the end of this ice story. We had a very dark ending to it that I may tell someday, but I was very satisfied with the ending of them shouting at each other in the hall and him saying, no, he died. When Bradley goes, that's how he died. He goes, I'm going to call your brother. I'm going to find you. He goes, no, my brother's dead. And he goes, that's how it ends. He fell through the ice. He goes, no, he died a different way many years later. So I don't know. He would never give it to him.
We have time for a couple more. It's hard to see out there. Yes, waving. Yeah. A question for the actors about, were there things about the characters that you were surprised you related to as you were getting into them, as you were discovering them?
I think the thing that I came to like Irv so much for was that he's really a romantic, you know. especially with two of the characters. Obviously, there's that he completely opens himself up to Sid, to Amy's character, and he reveals himself completely, warts and all, and he's accustomed to people running for the hills when that happens. And once again, he feels like that's happened and he's lonely, but he truly finds a soulmate because she comes back and she says, regardless, you know, I want to be with you, and he just loves her endlessly for that, you know, because he can truly share every thought that he has with this woman, and then obviously is heartbroken when she leaves. And then equally with Jeremy's character, with Carmine, that he turns out to be the only true friend that Irv has ever had in his life, and he respects him. He wants to be more like him. He wants to be altruistic in the way that Carmine is. He adores the way that Carmine will take these shortcuts in order to get there, because that's just realistic, and he sees the system as being corrupt as well. But again, he knows that he's setting his only friend he's ever had in his life, he's setting him up in a sting, and that just kills him. And so at heart, he really does have a heart of gold, you know, despite the fact that you've got this character on the surface is gypping people for thousands of dollars, and that's an awful thing, and that's not sympathetic at all. But I came to really, really like the character, and I hope you guys saw that as well and felt that too.
Anyone else?
About relating to your character.
No, you go. It's next in line. Well, let's do it together.
Okay, we'll just try to
I'll
talk at
answer
the
for
same
you.
time. Okay, we'll just talk at the same time. If, I mean, there are ways that I relate to Sydney/Edith, but when you dig into a character and it's really deep, it feels really vulnerable to stand in front of you guys and say, this is what we have in common. Because I put it into the character. And the things that we have in common, I did put into the character. So I kind of feel vulnerable saying, well, this is what we share. But let's just say I identified with her feeling lost at times. So yeah.
Yeah, but here I go. I kind of, the ways that I could kind of forgive Rosalyn and slightly understand, she felt like she was being lied to the whole time. She knew that she was being lied to, and she knew that there were things going on that Irving felt like she was too stupid to understand, or that she was too stupid to, and then therefore she created these awful situations and became this kind of, would do these very malicious things, but in her mind, she's the victim, so it's okay, and oftentimes we forget that we're not the only victims. We forget about the other person's side of the story, because when we're hurt, we think that that's the only side of the story, so it's okay to hurt that person. Well,
Yeah, that's good.
yeah,
That's-
I'm halfway there. Talk me through it. Yeah, it's, as a more level-headed person, you remind yourself, okay, this is the whole situation. This is how they see it. This is how I see it. So this is how I'm going to react. Through Rosalyn, it was, this is how I feel, and this is how I'm going to react. But I definitely could, that was probably the only part of Rosalyn that I could kind of get on board with and understand, that anger at feeling like you're being lied to, and therefore you can do more painful things because you're the victim.
Richie, I don't, the way I think about him more than anything, if I personally relate to him, was that I missed playing
The curlers.
I did miss the curlers, but I did really care for him. I found him terribly heartbreaking, and I had a lot of warmth towards that guy. I felt like he was just so transparent when he thought he was like getting over, like when he's making fun of Lewis at the end there. He's so riding high in that moment. It's just, that just everything is gonna fall apart. and he thinks he's so funny, you know, and it's just, you're watching this like 15-year-old boy, and like when he takes Amy and he throws her, you know, you're at Studio 54, and he puts her in the bathroom and he pulls up her dress and her feet and her hands are up against the wall, and what does he do? He like sits back and says, I really like you. Like he's at like an 8th grade dance, and he's never kissed a girl before, you know. And when he gets yelled at by the guy that he idolizes, he has to run out of the building and cry. I mean, it's just, poor guy. You know, and I loved his, you know, that sort of bravado that was, you know, a centimeter thick, you know, that he had. Yeah, I just, you know, I missed him. Yeah. Yeah.
You have to have something in common with any character I've played, so I found a lot of wonderful things about Carmine, but I'm not sharing them with you.
I think we're just about out of time, but I wanted to just ask you one thing, David, in closing, which is this your team now? We don't have Robert De Niro with us, but do you feel going forward, are you thinking about doing more projects with these guys? Is this your group?
I mean, you take it one role at a time and one idea at a time, and I will go. All of them except Jennifer, I would say, pretty much. So if there are ideas I want to talk to everybody up here about, and I should be so lucky if they ever share the same interest, and I ever get the privilege of working together again. And not Jennifer, thank you.
He's just going to wait till you're all nominated for the Oscar and then pitch them to you at the Oscars. But I want to thank so much David O. Russell and the cast of
Yeah, thanks, David.
American
Thank you.
Hustle.
Thank you.